Alright guys, we're officially back in action. I know it's been a while since our last GTA stories, but don't worry because this one today is probably one of the most crazy we've told so far. And you know I gotta take a quick sec to just let you guys know how much I appreciate your guys' support. We're at 992 subscribers, and believe me and Matt never thought that this channel would get this big so fast. And it's just awesome to see all of you in the comments and just all the support we get, and we really appreciate it. Anyways, with all that out of the way, let's get right into this episode of GTA Stories. Canada has a large Tamil population that mostly migrated to the country in the early 1990s during the Sri Lankan Civil War, which took place between 1983 and 2009. It would be a bloody conflict, seeing more than 800,000 Sri Lankan Tamils fleeing from their country, which majority of Sri Lanka's population is Sinhalese, which are predominantly Buddhist, and only 15% of the country consists of Tamils who are from the northeast of Sri Lanka, and also have a population that reside within southern India. But in contrast to the Sinhalese being Buddhist, majority of Tamils are Hindu. Before the Sinhalese government was established, the island of Sri Lanka, along with India, were controlled by the British. And after they left, the country gained its independence in 1948, with the Sinhalese majority taking control. Sri Lanka's Tamil population would face decades of oppression. Being an ethnic minority within the country meant that Tamils weren't allowed to speak their own language, would need to score higher to be considered for advanced education, and could be arrested and prosecuted against without a warrant. This led to the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam to be formed, otherwise known as the LTTE, a guerrilla faction that sought to have its own Tamil government, and in 1983 the Civil War kicked off, which lasted 25 years, with the Sinhalese government defeating the Tamil guerrillas. The UN estimates over 100,000 people perished during the conflict, majority of whom were killed within the 80s and 90s. And throughout the 1990s, over 200,000 people immigrated from Sri Lanka to Canada. With this, they became Canada's #1 refugee group for the rest of the decade, majority of whom were Tamils, and they would quickly ingrain themselves within Canadian society and would help change the country's cultural makeup. A large portion of Tamil immigrants settled within Toronto in its greater region, but like I've mentioned in other GTA Stories episodes, Toronto in the 1990s was a much different place. The city has historically never been very accepting towards immigrants, especially in cases of large waves of refugees, and as Toronto became more culturally diverse by the year 1990, this only added to the tensions. It meant that Sri Lankans were not only discriminated against by white Torontonians, but also other cultures, including separate immigrant groups who had also recently settled in the city, viewing Tamil immigrants as charity cases. With Tamil immigrants facing prejudice everywhere, this meant sticking together was pretty much a necessity. Also, various other gangs in the city looked to sell drugs in their community, which added another element towards the tensions. And coming from a war-torn country meant some of these immigrants had already been desensitized towards violence and already faced much adversity. It proved to work in their favor as older Tamil immigrants began to organize gangs around the city. They would recruit members predominantly in Scarborough and Etobicoke, but also gained influence pretty much in every part of the city. Allegedly, 2 founding members of one street gang had links to the LTTE, Sri Ranjan Raza and Nirjan Claude Fabian. And don't worry, I know I butchered those names. They were supposedly motivated to earn money for the Tamil Tigers. Raza and Fabian would go on to start the Toronto-based gang known as the VVT, which was the abbreviation for a northern Sri Lankan town, and also was the birthplace of the leader of the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. Law enforcement regarded the VVT as a highly tech-savvy and organized gang, and would go on to have younger subsets like the Gilder Boys to back them. The VVT was believed to have around 200 members, with the police alluding to them possibly having more than 1,000 associates. They held influence in neighborhoods throughout Toronto, but predominantly in the West End and Etobicoke. Another gang's roots started to the east in Scarborough, within the Silver Springs apartment complex. They were influenced by Jethravi Sitampalam, a transport driver who resided within the complex, and he began to recruit members to combat Caribbean immigrants who also lived in the buildings. He was suspected by law enforcement to be part of a group that were opposed to the LTTE back in Sri Lanka, after multiple members of his family were killed by the guerrilla faction. He was believed to form a connection with the People's Liberation Organization of Tamil, their main goal being to dismantle the LTTE and their operations and unify the country of Sri Lanka. Jethrafi would be known to his peers as Kannan, which was derived from a name of a Hindu god, which alluded to the fact of how much these youths looked up to him. They would eventually add the first two initials of the AK-47 rifle to form their full name, the AK Cannon Gang. By 1992, they were involved in the street-level sale of narcotics and firearms, and as both the VVT and AK Cannon Gang expanded their operations, they used their younger members with the support of other subsets to enforce their presence in the street, in most cases resulting in violence. Even though both gangs were made up of Tamil immigrants, didn't mean that both supported the same cause back in Sri Lanka. It would only be alleged that the VVT were earning funds for the LTTE, but the leader of AK Cannon, Jethrafi Sitampalam, was proven to be opposed to the LTTE and structured his gang's ideology to oppose the VVT's political views. And the VVT, at the least, was confirmed to support the Tamil Tigers' ideology, creating a divide between both gangs in Toronto. It's believed in 1993, after an argument took place at a party over Sri Lankan politics, it resulted in a man known as Babu being hit with a shotgun blast, killing him instantly. The VVT and AK Cannon now viewed each other as hostiles. Police were unable to connect any other homicides towards both the gangs until 4 years later, when they both made headlines in the slaying of an innocent bystander. On December 27, 1997, Kaplan Palasistaran, a 19-year-old university student, was at a donut shop with his two friends at 3268 Finch Avenue when a car pulled up and fired multiple rounds into the building. Kaplan would be struck multiple times and later succumbed to his wounds, and his two friends were also injured in the shooting. Tamil communities began to speak out publicly against both gangs. They pled to authorities to put an end to the violence that had been ignored for so many years. The police said it was because there was a lack of cooperation throughout Tamil communities, as well the gangs fear-mongering and pressuring locals into not speaking out. Regardless, there was a huge gap in public knowledge on what truly started this gang war, and the murder of Kaplan Palasistaran remains unsolved to this day, which alludes to the fact of the Toronto Police's negligence in solving murders at this time. And I can confidently say, with researching other stories like this, that this wasn't an isolated incident when it came down to police investigating murders in low-income areas. The same year, in 1997, Ranjan Raza and Nirajan Claude Fabian, the two suspected leaders of the VVT, were arrested and implicated on multiple murder cases linked to the Tamil Tigers. They were believed to be hitmen for the organization, which had off-branch syndicates supporting the LTTE that operated mainly throughout Vancouver. With this arrest, a new leader would step in to take their place. A man known as Kailashan, who had been on police's radar since 1995. Landing in Canada July 1991 after his father was killed back in Sri Lanka for supporting the LTTE. When Kannan arrived, he worked at Mr. Lube while finishing high school. He was regarded as an intelligent entrepreneur who had aspirations of going to university after high school and had no criminal record. When he went off to university, he was regarded as a clean-cut engineering student who donated blood 5 times a year. But little did they know, Kannan, otherwise known as Kalesh, had been funding his schooling by earning money with the VVT gang. He was then implicated in a swarming attack in 1995 when him and a group of VVT members attacked a witness during an ongoing case. During this attack, allegedly Kalesh slashed the victim with a machete. He was then charged with possession of the weapon, but they were soon dropped. Kalesh's name was also thrown around during the 1997 murder of Tristan, but the police also suspected other VVT members of being jealous of the fact that Kalesh was studying to become an engineer and had a higher status within the gang. April 1998, he and Kannan came to an agreement. A truce would be carried out after a ceremony at a Hindu temple in Richmond Hill. But with so many members within both their gangs' ranks, Kannan and Kalesh had little control over the personal beefs on the street. The truce only lasted several months because in the same year, a massive brawl broke out in Toronto's Little India area, which involved more than 50 people brawling with knives and broken beer bottles. It would be a bloody and public spectacle that reignited their feud. This happened in November 1998, and by June 1999, the war was in full swing. June 25th, 1999, another Tamil youth is hospitalized after a brutal beating carried out with baseball bats. Later that day, his friends looked to avenge his jumping. They began driving around the city armed with a shotgun, a MAC-10 submachine gun, and a .22 caliber pistol. They spotted their beaten friends' perpetrators cruising around Scarborough's West End. As they approached a red light, they fired a shotgun round into the back of their vehicle. This was followed by a short burst of 9mm rounds from the MAC-10. As the shooters rolled to the side of the vehicle, they fired a flurry of .22 caliber rounds, along with another shotgun blast. This shooting was so chaotic, even one of the shooters would be hit by friendly fire. The 3 men were all hit with bullets and shrapnel, but one 9mm round that traveled through the back license plate would strike the heart of one of them, which killed him instantly. 2 days after this killing, on June 27th, 3 teens were enjoying a late-night snack in their car at a Burger King in the Kennedy Fields Plaza in Markham when gunshots were fired across the parking lot, striking the 3 teens' car, leaving 16-year-old Sandy Ibrahim dead. The police released that this was another gangland shooting between 2 Tamil gangs. The VVT and AK Cannon wouldn't make any other headlines until September 2000, which would shock the Tamil community as they thought the gang problem was dissipating. But unfortunately, yet again, another machete attack was carried out. The man would survive, but the next day, another man was beaten with clubs and then ran over 2 times, leaving him dead, with law enforcement alleging that this was in retaliation to the first stabbing that took place a day before. The next month, 2 other Tamil teens, a 17-year-old and 18-year-old, were killed outside of an apartment complex. But there's a lack of information regarding this case, and I was unable to confirm it. And then, in November 2000, known AK Cannon gang members are spotted surveilling a police station with cameras, taking pictures of cruisers and their license plates. By this time, the Tamil public was sick of gangs in their communities. Kannan was known to use his gang to intimidate witnesses and would use his enforcer, known as Ponchan, to spread fear within their ranks. Kalesh, the supposed VVT leader, had now become far separated from the streets of Toronto. He had graduated university and now had a job as a chemical engineer that took him between Ottawa and Montreal. It's unknown whether Kalesh was still pulling the strings of the VVT from afar, or a new leader had taken his place. Regardless, he was still the police's #1 suspect for leadership of the gang, and they would continue to investigate him. Cannon's second-in-command and brutal enforcer, Ponchin, who was known to attend trials of AK Cannon gang members, he'd be seen whispering to defendants and coaching them through their cases, and his presence would always be felt in the courtroom, so the Tamil community of Scarborough rarely spoke out during hearings. In December 2000, Ponchin was with his girlfriend and child at their suburban home in Markham. Bullets began to fly through their house, nearly missing their newborn child. When police arrived, Ponchin verbally expressed he intended to retaliate, and then contacted multiple VVT members, calling them out for the attack. Ponchin, probably for his own safety, was implicated in another case and was detained by the police. They held him for a short period before releasing him in March 2001. Ponchin was then shot 5 times when leaving the gates of Mimico Correctional Center, but ended up surviving the assassination attempt. The same year, between 2000 and 2001, there were also 6 other unsolved homicides within Etobicoke, alluding to the fact of how dangerous the street politics were at the time. The AK Cannon within Scarborough would not only have to deal with the VVT to the west, but various other Caribbean-based street gangs to the east of them. Police also alleged between this time that multiple Tamil gangs had been involved in nearly 50 shootings throughout the city, and would make headlines yet again with another assassination plot carried out against Kannan and Ponchin. As the two were seen driving around Scarborough, they would approach a red light. 2 vans pulled up beside them with multiple gunmen jumping out and opening fire. They were fired at 16 times before Kannan and Ponchin sped off. They both made it out unscathed. The only injury inflicted was from a piece of flying glass that cut the finger of Ponchin. With another daylight shooting involving both VVT and AK Cannon gang members, the police had enough evidence to take both the gangs down. They also had the support of multiple Tamil communities that were more than willing to speak out against both gangs, and with this, the police would carry out raids across the city, arresting 51 members of the VVT and AK Cannon. And since Canada's view on gangs had begun to change due to the War on Terror, they looked to deport all parties involved, with the Crown also attempting to implicate gang members in a conspiracy to fund guerrilla factions in Sri Lanka. The Canadian government had now viewed them as terrorist cells. Both Kannan and Kalesh were charged with fraud and obstruction of justice, with Ponchin also being included in these charges. Canada quickly deported majority of the gang members, including Kannan, Ponchin, and Kalesh. Some viewed deportation back to Sri Lanka for these gang members as a death sentence. The VVT and AK Cannon's members supported separate factions in the ongoing civil war, and they feared prosecution or even attempts by the government or guerrilla factions to kill them for their political beliefs. Ponchin would be deported, but after a long battle with the Canadian government, was allowed back into the country. Kalesh would find asylum in New Zealand, but tragically him and his entire family perished in a house fire in December 2016. Kannan returned to Sri Lanka. He technically supported a guerrilla faction that was opposed to the LTTE and would be supported by the official Sri Lankan government, which meant that his situation was less dire, but can't really confirm his status and whereabouts today. Remnants of this gang war are still around today, with multiple Tamil and Indo-Canadian gangs who carry out smaller revenge wars that are derived from this civil war that they had no part in, but are inadvertently affected by it. It spread from subsets like the VVT's Gilder Boys and AK Cannon's Silver Spring Boys, with both these subsets also making headlines throughout the 2000s. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I really took a lot of time researching and putting this one together. I also tried really hard not to go into any conspiratorial territory with this one, because with this story there's definitely a lot, and it's definitely my most censored GTA stories up until this point. But with that, don't be shy to leave down in the comments what you guys know about this story, or just any crazy conspiracies surrounding it, because I know there's a lot and I'm really interested to hear what you guys say. And again, if you really thought it was interesting, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you're not already. And as always, I'll catch you all in the comments.